So let us prepare ourselves. If you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And my ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now just put your hand over your heart and extend out your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is one that is said so often, I worry that we don't actually hear it. It's kind of been popularized, and that's the spiritual truth that says, change your thinking, change your life. And because it's so popular, I want to make sure that we aren't using it as a throwaway line, that we're really taking it in and what it means. I want to elevate that spiritual truth back up to where it belongs into the spiritual teaching realm. And in order to do that, I think we have to be really mindful of not going too fast with it, with really beginning to understand the power there that says, change your thinking, change your life. You know, sometimes I hear people say, I want a mate. I want to fall in love again. I just want a mate. But if you talk with them for 5 or 10 minutes, you really begin to see the bitterness that is residing inside of them from, the last relationship. Maybe you got out of it a month ago or maybe 30 years ago, and you're still carrying that bitterness within you. The truth is, you can't attract anybody to you until you change your thinking about that experience. Doesn't mean lie to yourself. It means put it into a different perspective so that when we can begin to change our thinking, the things on the outer begin to rearrange themselves. We don't even have to do anything. If we will just take today's spiritual truth, change your thinking, which changes your belief, which changes your feelings, which changes the response of the world to you, those conditions will begin to alter all by themselves. How do you do that? It's easy to say, change your thinking, change your life. But how do you do that? Well, I have some help for us today because, as I like to say, we are a practical application church. Inspiration without application is what? Hallucination, and we don't want any hallucination here at CSA. So I'm going to be working with one of the best books that is ever written. Is it a new book? No. Is there anything new in this book? Not one thing. There's not one thing in this book that you can't also find in the Bible, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Sutras, in the Vedas. It's all in here because it's universal spiritual truth. And by the way, I recommend that you pick up any one of those things. I hear people say sometimes, I can't read the Bible. It's not true what's in the Bible. Look, don't wait for something to be true to read it. Just read it. How many books have y'all read that weren't completely true, novels even, that you got something out of? Take a look at it. But the difference between those books, those spiritual texts that I just talked about, and this book is in those books, you have to study it. You have to be a student of the Vedas. You have to be a student of the Bible in order to be able to shift your thinking and shift your life. In this book, you know what? You just have to read it. You just have to read this book, and you will notice that you're beginning to change. That's what happened to me. I started reading it, and I started noticing that I was reacting differently to things. Now, those of you who know me know I don't have a whole lot of patience. Patience isn't one of the things that I have been able to cultivate over the years. And I talked last week about, being furious about standing behind somebody in a Subway sandwich line and have them stare at the case and stuff. But then I remembered when I was working on this sermon, you know what? One of the things I got more patient. I didn't try to get more patient. Just the stuff in this book began to shift me. So that when I would go to Safeway and I would get in the 10 items or less line, I wasn't counting the people's items in front of me. I stopped counting them. And I just began to allow life to unfold as it should. Well, when we read this, we begin to understand. We begin to understand that we have an opportunity to live in a whole different environment because it's an environment we create as we go. In the Bible it says, "In my Father's house there are many mansions that you can walk into. Some of those mansions so beautiful, decorated by the very lilies of the field. Some of those mansions so beautiful that they just call to you because it just feels warm when you walk in. And you've all walked into rooms where you felt good. And we want to be able to use this book to walk into any single room and feel absolutely great about who you are and who everybody else is, even if they don't look like you, even if they don't sound like you, even if they don't live like you. If you are able to use the principles in this book, you will find that you are so much more open to all of life in the great diversity that it presents itself. Well, if we were asked, Tolte, to look at today's spiritual truth, that truth that says change your thinking, change your life, if we were to ask Tolte how to reframe that in his language, he would say, change your awaring and you will change your life. Now, awaring is a word I made up. It doesn't exist. It's the verb of awareness. It's the action of awareness. If you will begin to change how aware you are on the planet, you will begin to change your life. Some people have gotten mixed up with Tolle. They say that what he says is you should stop thinking. Now, the truth is, you can't stop thinking. It's not possible for you to stop thinking. Have you ever tried to stop thinking about something? Somebody says, oh, don't think about getting a cold. Well, then all you see everybody sniffling, and that's all you think about. You can't stop thinking. What he's saying in this book is don't stop thinking. What he's saying is stop thinking in that repetitive and unnecessary way. Some of you have heard me say before that human beings have 90,000 thoughts a day. And 90 to 97% of those 90,000 thoughts are the same thoughts you thought yesterday. And a good portion of them are not life-affirming thoughts. What he's saying is stop thinking in that repetitive and unnecessary way. Don't stop thinking. Well, how do you do that? How do you do that? The first way that you do that is to stop moving. You know, I could say meditation. I hesitate saying meditation in this room because I know so many of us really aren't into meditating. So forget about meditation. I don't want you to meditate. No meditation, okay? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop talking. Stop moving your arms, your legs, your mind. Just stop. Just be still. And begin to see what happens in the stillness. Begin to see what you become aware of in the silence. The great Muslim poet Rumi said, out beyond right and wrong there is a field. I will meet you there. Out beyond thinking is a field, and I will meet you there. Out beyond Muslims and Christians there is a field, and I will meet you there. Out beyond gays and straight people is a field, and I will meet you there. Out beyond black people and white people is a field, and I will meet you there. Out beyond concert pianists and rappers is a field, and I will meet you there. Out beyond Democrats and Republicans is a field, and I will meet you there. Out beyond thinking is a field, and I will meet you there. But in order to get to that field, you have to stop. You have to stop. You have to just be still. You don't have to be still for 20 minutes. You can be still for 5 minutes. If I had time, I would simply stop talking and ask you to just be aware of what it is you're aware of. And the more we do that, the more we change our thinking, because we look at things differently when we become aware. The second way, the first way is to stop, also known as meditation. The second way is to begin to let go of labels in this lifetime. He talks about the opportunity we have to become more aware and change our thinking if we would simply let go of labels. And he offers us a spiritual practice to do that, which I think is nothing short of brilliant. What he says is to go into nature and stand in front of a tree, and don't call it a tree, because that's a label. Just stand in front of the tree and behold the bark. Behold the leaves. Behold the majesty. Look at its purpose. Does it bear fruit? Don't name the fruit. Does it provide shade? Does it give oxygen? What is its purpose? But don't call it a tree. Stand before a rock and look at the rock and behold the rock. And don't call it a rock. See its density. See its color. See where it is. See what information it has for you, but don't label it. When you see a squirrel, don't call it a squirrel. Behold the squirrel. What is it doing? What color is it? What is its purpose? He asks us to do that with nature because he understands that we don't have any history with nature. Tolle says, look, you never lent a rock $10 that never paid you back. A tree never talked behind your back and said some unkind things to you. So start with nature and begin this practice of beholding and not labeling. But he says something really even more amazing than that. He said, well, first he says, when we begin to do that, we stop missing the beauty of life, the beauty that has the opportunity to shift our thinking about certain things. And so he asks us to move on from nature, from rocks and inanimate objects, to people we don't know. Maybe there is a child in your life, a neighbor's child, or somebody you see in the park. Don't call it a child. Just look at that child and behold that child. And then move on to people you do know. And then move on to people you don't like. And then move from people in your individualized life to the greater world. Look, the next time you stop at a panhandler, don't name it a panhandler. Behold that person. Look at that person. Begin to ask yourself what their life must be like. Behold them. It's not only, there are other people too. Sometimes I have to behold politicians. It's a hard deal for me because I have strong opinions. But if I stop calling them Republicans and Democrats and just behold them and look at them and see the presence of God in them. Sometimes it's institutions. I have a little difficulty sometimes with those churches that are on the planet that think I am an abomination. They don't know me. But I've stopped labeling them as evangelical Christian churches. And now I'm teaching myself to simply behold them. To find out what it is that they need. What are they thinking? What is it they want? When we begin to do that, when we begin to do that level of awareing, I promise you, you will change your entire life. The outer will begin to shift, and you will begin to notice a change within yourself without even knowing how you got that change. It will just simply come to pass. A lot of the focus in this book is on ego. So I want to make sure, because we're going to be talking about it for the next couple of weeks, I want to make sure that we all are on the same page about what ego means here at CSA within the framework of Eckhart Tolle. And that is this: it's identification to form. Ego is your identification to form. Now, some of those forms are thought forms. I have an identification as minister. Some people have identification as physician, some as doctors, some as carpenters. It's what we do. These young people have an identification with their instrument as musician. So some of it is thought form, and other are actual things, like their musical instruments. And our bands, they have an identification with that form. Sometimes it's your car, sometimes it's your house. Now, it's really important that you don't misunderstand the beautiful work that he has done here in this book. He is not saying smash the ego. He is not saying get rid of your attachment to form or your identification with form. He's saying be careful with it. Be smart with it. What he's saying is this: the identification that you have with your form should only be to bring you joy. It should never be about your well-being. So if I have an attachment to being a minister, that brings me great joy. If I were not a minister, I would be okay. I would find another way to express who it is I am. There's a lot of talk, especially among my tribe in the recovery community, about smash the ego. We don't teach smash the ego here. We think your ego is purposeful and it is good. But what we don't want you to do is such a strong identification with it that if it changes, if the form changes in any way, that you're not have a feeling of well-being. Here's what happens. When forms change and we are so attached to it and we don't like it, death of some kind happens. Sometimes it's a physical death. There were people in the Great Depression who jumped out of windows because they were so attached to the form of money, of their money, they couldn't see that they were okay. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King brought a new way of being on the world. And he said the old form of institutionalized racism has to stop now. And I'm going to work to make it stop. There were people so attached to the form of institutionalized racism as it looked before Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King started the movement that he started, that he died, that he was killed. This is serious stuff. We act out. And so we do one of two things. We either try and kill the form we don't like that's coming our way, and this is true in every one of your own lives. You can find form that's changing. Maybe your kids aren't doing what you want them to do. It's a change in form. You have two ways that you can respond. You can understand that you can let go. It's your ego's attachment to it, and it has nothing to do with your being okay. My mother was very attached to me going to the prom. I cannot tell you how attached my mother was to me going to the prom. From the time I was 12, she started talking prom talk. Well, I'm here to tell you I wasn't going to be stuffed in some little dress and go to the prom. I knew that. But she was so attached to that form, she couldn't let it go. So what happens is either you kill something, either a person or an energy or an essence, or you make them go away. You make them hide who they are. It's very powerful, this idea. See, what we're talking about here are enhancements. Now, we are a church that loves enhancements. We're not a church that says don't have your toys, don't have your good stuff, don't enhance yourself. What we're saying is those enhancements are to bring you joy. They are not to bring you a connection with your essence or your well-being in this lifetime. You know who understands this? Madison Avenue understand it. They stopped selling things a long time ago. They don't sell things anymore. All they sell are feelings now. Did you ever notice that? Every woman in the world knows that she's far sexier if she gets her under things from Victoria's Secret as opposed to Penny. Every one of us knows that's just how it is. Okay? And guys, you don't get off. You all know that you'll be Michael Jordan if you wear Hanes shorts. They get it. Everybody gets it. They're selling feelings. They're not selling things anymore because they understand this attachment that we have to form. Form's not a bad thing, and I want to make sure that we understand that. What I want to ask you, though, is who are you putting out of your heart because they have a label, because you're so attached to what that form looks like? Open it up this week. Begin to open it up. Look at those people in your life, the ones you know and the ones you see in the airport that are passing you by, and you think you know something. Behold them. Look at them. I want to wind up this morning with a story from my new favorite book, Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung? It's by a Buddhist monk, and he says, when I was 14 years old, I was studying for my O-level examinations in high school in London. My parents and teachers advised me to stop playing soccer in the evenings and weekends, to stay at home instead of giving the time to my homework. They explained how important O-level exams were, and that if I did well, then I'd be happy. I followed their advice, and I did very well on the exams. But it didn't make me that happy, because my success meant now that I had to study even harder for another 2 years, and for the A-level exams. My parents and teachers advised me to stop going out in the evenings and weekends, to stop chasing girls now and to stop chasing soccer balls, and to stay home and study. They told me how important the A-level exams were, and that if I did well, I'd be happy. Once again, I followed their advice, and I did very well. Once again, it didn't make me happy, because now I had to study harder for 3 more long years for a degree at the university. My parents and teachers advised me to steer clear of the bars and parties in college, but instead to work hard and long at my studies. They told me how important university degree was, and if I did well, then, I'd be happy. At this point, I became suspicious. I saw some of my older friends who had worked very hard and got their degree. Now they were working even harder in their first job. They were working extremely hard to save enough money to buy something important like a car. They told me, when I have enough money to buy a car, then I'll be happy. When they had the funds enough to buy their first car, they still weren't happy. Now they were working hard to buy something else, and then they'd be happy. And they were struggling in the turmoil of romance, looking for a partner in life. They told me, when I get married, and then I'll be happy. The story goes on and talks about when they get married, then when they have children, then they'll be happy. And when the children are grown and college is paid for, then they'll be happy. And when they are able to retire, then they'll be happy. And they're going to church at the last minute. And why are you going to church? Because when I die, I want to be happy in heaven. So I want to really begin to look at this notion of our happiness as it attaches to our ego. Heaven is at hand, right here, right now. So let us take this message into prayer, knowing that we're in the heart and the mind and the love and the glory of God. I give thanks. I give thanks for each and every person in this church. I give thanks. I give thanks for the great law of life, for always saying yes, for saying yes to our Compassionate Ministries program that is enabling us to serve hot meals to people on the river. I say yes and thanks to the great one for saying yes to our teen program that is building and building strong teens. I just say yes. I give yes and thank you. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.